Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Welcome to part 4 of my review of Masks of Nyarlathotep for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition by Chaosium. In this video I will be covering Chapter 2, England. This video will be in 2 parts. The first one will be the initial investigation in London and cover 2 of the side adventures, and part 2 will cover the 3rd side adventure that runs adjunct to the main campaign, as well as a story thread that led the investigators here. England is the next chapter up, although the players could easily start with any of the other chapters. It is presented here as the first due to it being geographically closest to America, and also the last place Jackson and Elias visited before returning to America. It gives a brief mention on what London has to offer, that being vast scholarly resources, generally friendly people, and street signs in English, and also talks about how to bring the place to life. Think fog, creeping cold, smoke and daytime bustle, and also how this contrasts with life beyond the city. It then moves on to how the investigators pick up the trail of Carlisle and Elias by listing all of the clues that lead back here. The England chapter is essentially in 5 parts. The initial investigations, 2 unrelated sidetrack scenarios, a sidetrack that has connections to the main story thread, and the build-up and conclusions to the England chapter. It stresses that the investigators should be drawn to Edward Gavigan, the Blue Pyramid Club, Henson Manufacturing, and finally the horrors of Missa House. It details what Carlisle did in London, as well as Elias, and how it leads up to the present moment, and gives another slightly confusing clue diagram. Moving on, it talks about how the chapter can be run, stressing that most of the trouble in England can be avoided or escaped from. After going through the pulp considerations, it talks about England itself, firstly focusing on the availability and legality of firearms there. They can be imported in with a valid weapon import licence, though those caught short can persuade customs officials that they are going hunting in Africa with the right rolls. The exception to this is shotguns, which at this time are not considered a firearm under British law, though those walking around central London with one on display will definitely draw unwanted attention from the police. It then moves on to the setting information of London itself, including how the money of the period worked. This information barely scratches the surface of London, and I would recommend either Cubicle 7's excellent Cthulhu Britannica London or Chaosium's The London Guidebook to properly give you the feel of the city. It talks about the methods of transport available at the time, such as the London Underground or Tube as it is known, double-decker omnibuses, hackney carriages and even electrified trams, as well as the usual things like cars and railways. It discusses accommodation briefly, and even has a piece on the London fog, which is particularly notorious at this time. After this we move on to the Coulson Residence in the UK, the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh. This operates in both London and Cairo, and at one time had an exclusively Egyptian membership, but now includes members that are Indian, Arabic and European in equal measure. It primarily serves the Pankey Foundation, who left Edward Gavigan in charge in his absence, who serves as the High Priest and is assisted by the High Priestess Zara Shafiq. She was sent to the UK by Omar al-Shakti to support the growth of the cult and runs day-to-day operations from a spice shop in Soho and the Blue Pyramid Club. Both of them are highly intelligent and utterly insane. The cult symbol is an inverted ankh, and their characteristic weapon is a short club embedded with a single spike. The cult uses the outdoor space at Missa House for their rituals and use the Blue Pyramid Club as a meeting place. Gavigan has a secret unit, Henson Manufacturing, in central England's Derby, where he has the special components for Penhue's rocket built, and these are sent to Shanghai aboard the Ivory Wind, which is currently berthed at Limehouse docks. The cult is involved in the illegal trafficking of antiquities, drugs, and recruitment of new members. Incidentally, it mentions that should any of the investigators find themselves captured, they will be transported to Essex to take place in their next rite. After this we have the dramatis personae of England. In this chapter we have Mickey Mahoney, the editor of The Scoop, who can assist them in providing clues throughout this chapter, though 2 of them are the sidetrack parts. There is Inspector James Barrington, a seasoned policeman who is investigating the proliferate amount of murders of Egyptian nationals that have been happening over the last year and who can help the investigators in taking down Gavigan and Shafiq. It then moves on to the main adversaries of this chapter, with the obvious first one being Edward Gavigan, current head of the Pankey Foundation and High Priest of the Black Pharaoh. He is polished, charming, intelligent and insane in equal measures. There's Zara Shafiq, the High Priestess of the Black Pharaoh, who despises Gavigan and plots his downfall. There's Punji Chowdhury, the owner of the warehouse in the Limehouse docks, who is in the pay of the cult to illegally transport machine parts to Shanghai, and there is Frank Marshall, a devotee of Edward Gavigan, who supervises the operation in Derby at Henson Manufacturing. It then moves on to the Mayan Npcs of the chapter, beginning with Thomas Kinnery, who is Gavigan's private secretary, Lars Torvak, the captain of the Ivory Wind, Abdul Noisha, the owner of the Blue Pyramid Club, Yalisha Essam, a dancer at the Blue Pyramid Club, and Edjo, a fanatical devotee of Zara Shafiq. It gives us a further pulp option in Detective Inspector John Craig, a 69-year-old retired policeman, and also a map of the City of London which has all of the pertinent places marked on it. Okay, so now we move on to the initial investigations in London down two avenues. Mickey Mahoney at the offices of the Scoop and Edward Gavigan at the Pankey Foundation. First up is the Scoop. The investigators can get to Mickey Mahoney's name via Jonah Kensington in New York City, or remember it from previous correspondence with Elias. The office can be found on Fleet Street, and upon meeting him he'll be saddened by Elias's death, and though initially reserved, will warm to the investigators, enjoying hearing about their exploits should they tell him. If questioned about Elias, Mahoney can advise them that he was recently in London and had promised him a story about an evil Coulson Residence there, hinting that they may well be connected, though never mentioning the name of the cult. He browsed through the Scoop's back issues, picking out some interesting stories to investigate, with Mahoney remembering 3 of them, and also not knowing whether Elias had followed up on any of them. The 3 stories are the sidetrack portions of this chapter. Mahoney remembers the headlines, but would need to dig through back issues to find them, but is also happy for the investigators to do so. If they do this, they find the Shocking Canvassers Craze story, detailed here. The next 2 pages are a double-page spread showing the route of the Carlisle expedition, which sadly doesn't work too well as the pertinent parts are in a centrefold and rendered partially unreadable. After this, it dives back into the Scoop where it details the second headline, Police Baffled by Monstrous Murders, and the last one, Slaughter Continues, Reward Offered. In between this, it details some pulp considerations with an attack on Mahoney by Gavigan's lackeys, and also the best research locations in London, as well as how the handouts connect to events. More details on the sidetrack scenarios later. The next part is the Pankey Foundation. We're greeted with a map of the building, and it goes into the various reasons that the investigators could be here due to the clues littered about the other parts of the campaign. Research into public information into the Foundation will reveal that it is in central London and is a high Victorian building that is grand in scale. It was founded by Sir Aubrey Pankey in 1890, who was murdered in Kenya while on the Carlisle expedition, and thus Edward Gavigan is now the Foundation's director. They are known to give scholars who are undertaking study of Egyptian history and antiquities monetary grants, as well as negotiating permits with the Egyptian authorities. The Foundation building houses Egyptian artefacts and acts as a repository for information on Egyptian history. They have supported roughly 20 digs in Egypt, with one underway in Cairo at this time on the Giza Plateau, led by Dr. Henry Clive. Edward Gavigan is mentioned little, but what can be gleaned from society columns is that he is a wealthy and learned scholar of Egypt and was Sir Aubrey Pankey's right-hand man. It then moves on to visiting the Pankey Foundation. The building is surrounded by a high iron fence and there is a doorman on duty from 8 am till 6 pm on weekdays, with a watchman patrolling the building once per hour. The building's interior is opulent and the Egyptian collection is viewable between 12 and 4 pm, during which time 2 guards will be stationed in the exhibit hall. There are various administrators, librarians and specialists that are in residence here, as well as 6 guards and 4 workmen. Gavigan and his private secretary Thomas Kinnery and a cleaning lady who works from 5 pm till midnight. All employees are cultists apart from some of the administrators who may potentially be should they display the right aptitude. It then goes on to describe the first or ground floor, which has a library that inquisitive investigators can discover an actual reference to the Black Pharaoh in, and the second floor which has the exhibit hall. Accredited scholars can request specific artefacts be brought out for examination here. It then moves on to the crux of their visit, meeting Edward Gavigan. All meetings requests are made through Thomas Kinnery to prevent time wasters, though if Gavigan is already aware of the investigation, having been pre-warned from the events of New York, then they are easily accommodated as Gavigan wants to know what they know about Elias. On arrival, they're greeted by Kinnery and taken to the waiting area outside Gavigan's office. After a few minutes, Gavigan strides out and warmly greets them, asking them to join him there. Astute investigators, upon entering his office, will notice a modern safe built into the floor of one of the corners of the room that is slightly ajar. Gavigan will make a show of noticing it open and closing it. This is a ploy by Gavigan, more on that in a bit. Upon being questioned, Gavigan will admit that he spoke to Elias concerning Sir Aubrey's Carlisle expedition tenure, expressing sadness that he has died. He advises that he only met him once and said he was working on the Foundation's involvement in supporting the expedition and that he was happy to talk about their role. An extreme psychology role will spot that Gavigan is leaving information out and that he mentions Elias with a disdainful air, and he will terminate the meeting should the conversation go further than he is willing to go with it. The information that Gavigan will give about the Carlisle expedition is thus. He had obtained information from an African woman about a shadowy time in Egyptian history that Sir Aubrey had long been interested in, saying that the information proved to be a hoax. The African woman disappeared with the exhibition's funds, around £3,500. Hypatia Masters, fearing that the heat and disappointment would affect her in Carlisle, suggested relocating to the Kenyan uplands where it is relatively cool. Once there, the group entered dubious territory and paid for it with their lives. Sir Aubrey's records of the expedition were lost with him. He explains that the expedition did turn up a number of interesting artefacts, some of which were loaned to the British Museum and others residing in the Pankey private collection, though most are still being catalogued for the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. He will happily show the investigators some of the lesser finds in the exhibition hall should they show an interest. If the characters make the mistake of dropping Jonah Kensington's name into the conversation with Gavigan, he will be murdered at his home. It then moves on to the key rooms in the Pankey Foundation. Gavigan's office is a wood-panelled affair with a few items of interest. Firstly, the safe. It contains £100 in white £1 notes with his signature written on the reverse. These are a plant so that he can tempt the investigators into stealing from him in order to determine their motives. There is a photo on his desk of an imposing country mansion with Miss a House inscribed in small writing on it. This is where the finale of this chapter takes place. There is a telegram from Dr. Henry Clive with regards to the current Giza excavation, but perhaps most importantly, the room has a secret door hidden in a closet. Opening this allows access to the storage room. Inside the storage room are things you would fully expect to find. Old drugs, crates, boxes, old furniture and the like, all covered in dust. Sharp-eyed investigators will notice that there is a clear route through this room that is used a lot due to the displacement of the dust. Following it will lead them to an empty mummy case in poor condition. If both eyes are pressed twice, something the investigators can discover through the necessary rolls, the case slides aside to reveal steps leading to a secret basement room. The basement is spacious and enclosed by a foot of concrete. This is where Gavigan prepares and experiments with spellcasting and storing the paperwork that is yet to be moved to Miss a House. The investigators can find many notable things here. There is a desk that has a revolver, some false passports and £2,000 in cash, and underneath there is a stout box containing paperwork and receipts for Henson Manufacturing for various components, a receipt for a cast iron safe and a letter from Puneet Chowdhury relating to the shipments of sundry antiquities to Shanghai aboard the Ivory Wind, and this business card. The walls are replete with various paintings of mythos deities that are detailed here. There are also several wooden crates that are open and one tall sealed one. It has the address of Ho Fan Imports in Shanghai stencilled on it in English and Chinese, and if opened they can find a bulbous brass statue of a thing wearing an Asian rice hat with tentacles bursting out from beneath it that is strangely oily to the touch. This is a representation of the bloated woman that has various negative in-game effects. In another crate labelled from Randolph Shipping Company in Australia, there is a fat, dragon-like figure with a head fringed with tentacles, a statue of Great Cthulhu. In a nearby ornate chest, there is a set of 2 silver daggers that are used in the binding of dimensional shamblers, and in a bookcase there are a number of mythos tomes. Equinox Divisé, Book of Daizan, and Liber Ivonis, amongst other books that discuss various mythos topics. There are also 15 scrolls, 10 of which praise various entities such as the Bloated Woman, Sambat, the Bloody Tongue, and the Lord of the Woods. The remaining 5 scrolls are written in different languages and contain spells. There's also a small stone jar that has black-grey dust inside. This is 5 applications of dust of Ibn Ghazi, which could be useful later on. It then goes into how the investigators can keep a watch on Gavigan and the Foundation. Gavigan visits Empire Spices in the night weekly to see Zara Shafiq. If he spots that he's being followed, he will instead go to the Diamondback, a club that has no cult relation that serves excellent food, which Gavigan will return home from afterwards. Once a month he catches a train to Henson Manufacturing in Derby, though if he realises he is being followed he will first try to lose the investigators, then head to the Pankey Foundation. Also, once per month he drives to his estate in Essex with Zara Shafiq and 2 cultists. Otherwise, he can be seen walking from his Mayfair flat, eating in fashionable restaurants and the like. It's important to note that he rarely goes to the Blue Pyramid Club. If a watch is kept on the Pankey Foundation, various employees will be seen coming and going, though some employees may head to the Blue Pyramid Club after work on the occasional evening. When appropriate, a delivery truck with Ferris & Sons painted on the side will bring a large heavy crate to the rear door. If the truck is followed, it will lead to Limehouse Docks. Once a month, the same truck will collect cultists from the Pankey Foundation and Blue Pyramid Club and take them to Miss a House in Essex for the cult's rites. Gavigan's Mayfair flat occupies 2 floors and nothing incriminating is kept there. If he finds his rooms have been broken into, he will have a few cultists watching the building for a few days. The Pankey Foundation is guarded 24/7 and is the toughest nut to crack. Should Gavigan believe they are a threat, he will have the investigators watched. He will at first try to scare them off, though if he suspects that they are going to go public about the Foundation, he will have them ambushed by a group of meaty thugs or send a horrific creature after them. If Gavigan finds out that they have mythos-related items such as the Mask of Hayama or Africa's Dark Secrets, he will have them attacked so he can take them. Should Zara Shafiq come to know that they are being followed, she will send some of her own loyal cultists to watch them and may even have them save the investigators if things take a nasty turn. Should Gavigan become fearful or annoyed by the investigators, he may unleash the Thing in the Fog, an invisible jelly-like horror. It will be released in the evening and can be detected by the smell of burning hair that intensifies as it nears them. It can only be spotted in bright light and will return to its own dimension if trapped in sunlight. It attacks by pushing its pliable tentacles into the breathing orifices of its victims, suffocating them. It can't be seen or detected, only experienced, and the only way to stop it is to break free and run. It's very hard to fight due to it being difficult to detect. In bright light it will appear as a sparkling grey cloud with thin tentacles. Should the investigators survive an encounter with the thing in the fog, they may be inclined to look into whether anyone else has encountered it. Looking through back issues of The Scoop will reveal a similar encounter in Glasgow, and it gives the option of the investigators journeying to Scotland in order to find out what happened. The next stop it details is the Limehouse docks. They should have found enough clues at this point to link the Pankey Foundation to it. Limehouse is a dirty part of London with a poor reputation for crime, opium and gambling. The residents are a real melting pot of African and Asian communities alongside working class English. People tend to keep themselves to themselves here, and those investigators who are well dressed and flashing cash about are likely to have their pockets picked or even get mugged. Should they speak with the locals, they can find out, with the right mix of social skill roles, that Ferris & Sons truck has been here in the last few days dropping off some big crates at Rope Makers Fields. They can also find out about Mr. Chowdhury having a warehouse there and that he keeps unusual hours moving goods in the dead of night. Should the investigators follow the truck from the Pankey Foundation, it will lead to the warehouse where they will unload crates that are collected by sailors from the Ivory Wind who will load them onto the nearby ship. Chowdhury is dangerous only if he thinks the investigators could be a threat. He will size them up and order his men to take them prisoner. He is fearless, though not a cultist, just a greedy man keeping a secret. If captured, he may even send word to Gavigan. He has several Lascars, sailors from South East and South Asia, who work for him, who will attempt to intimidate investigators enough that they will move on, and if they happen to kill any of them, they will dump their body in the Thames. Much of what Chowdhury has in his warehouse is illegal. Alongside the mythos items and machinery of Gavigan's that are being sent to Shanghai is opium, firearms, explosives and stolen goods. Should the investigators discover this, the police can be convinced to raid the place, earning them respect from the aforementioned Inspector Barrington. Next it moves on to the Ivory Wind. Currently berthed in Regent's Canal Dock in Limehouse, this dilapidated freighter is captained by Lars Torvak, a 54-year-old Norwegian alcoholic. Investigating the ship itself turns up the fact that it has a Chinese registry with Shanghai as its home port. It stops at various other ports along the way to Shanghai, with the voyage taking up to 3 months to complete. His crew is made up of Norwegian, African and Chinese hands. He smuggles cult goods alongside his legitimate goods for Chowdhury, who pays him well. Keeping watch on the ship sees the captain regularly heading to a nearby pub to drink, while 8 sailors remain on board the ship. Should the investigators sneak aboard, they will be considered to be thieves, of course, and duly roughed up and thrown in the dock, though if threatened with firearms they'll back off and let the investigators leave the ship untouched. If they follow Torvak to the pub, they can spark up a conversation with him and discover that he has never heard of Edward Gavigan or the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh, and mention that Chowdhury pays him well to transport goods to an importer called Ho Fang in Shanghai, being told that the crates contain off-the-books antiques. He can, with the right roles, be persuaded to allow the investigators on board the ship to open the crates, and is as surprised as anyone with the contents, but considers a deal, and he is very hesitant to allow them to take anything that he is shipping. The crates in question are marked as coming from the Pankey Foundation and are for Cairo Museum in Egypt, though removing the label shows that they cover an original label marked for Ho Fang. There are 15 crates, of which 8 hold futuristic machine parts, and the others have items within them related to the mythos. The futuristic machinery cannot be identified, other than that they look like they may be used in reaction motor control. The mythos items packed in the other crates are a veritable treasure trove of potential insanity. There is a large painting that is linked directly to one of the sidetrack adventures, the Chelsea Serpent, as well as a number of other items such as a 7-foot-tall statue of an Egyptian pharaoh whose face is obscured by a mass of squirming tentacles, an exotic conch shell that can summon an area of dense fog, and even the skin from 2 human feet that are enchanted to transport the person adorned with them to places humanity was not meant to go to. After this we have an optional yet useful scene called Tales of the Dead. This involves a psychic medium, Miss Yasmin Pink, who is able to communicate with the spirits of the dead. The investigators may see a window sign or two advertising her services in either Soho, Limehouse or Chelsea. She may even contact the investigators, telling them that she has a message for them from an old friend. She wears an old-style Victorian dress sewn with pink ribbons. She makes a point of never accepting payment before a sitting, and if the investigators agree to sit with her, she will dim the lights and go through the motions of what you would generally imagine a seance to be performed like. She falls into a trance and her voice changes. The investigators can actually contact Jackson Elias from beyond the grave, and he can, through Miss Pink, point the investigators in the right direction should they be struggling with finding clues. Elias won't spell things out for them, but rather will give cryptic lines which the investigators have to work out. Next up, we have the 3 sidetrack scenarios, the Chelsea Serpent, the Derbyshire Horror and Slaughter in Soho. The first 2 are unrelated to the main plot and the third is linked. As the first 2 are unrelated, I will for the sake of completion give a quick rundown of what everyone should expect. The Chelsea Serpent involves an artist called Miles Shipley, who paints scenes the like of which no artist has ever captured. The reason for this is that a serpent man called Sathasa has taken residence with him in his Chelsea home. Shipley met a stranger in his local pub who said he could show him scenes to paint. Using hypnosis and the plutonium drug, Sathasa sent Shipley's consciousness back in time, and his paintings grew in power and impact. Sathasa made a deal with Shipley whereby the Serpent Man would continue providing the drug and Shipley would provide sustenance in the form of people for him to consume. The first meal was Shipley's mother Bertha, who Sathasa has consumed the likeness of and who dominates Shipley completely. Miles is an incurably sane wreck who is addicted to the plutonium drug, who barely leaves the house except to hunt down meals for Sathasa. It tells us about Sathasa and Shipley and then goes into the possibility of the investigators visiting Shipley's house in Holborn Mews. It details the various reasons as to how and why they may visit. It maps out the house detailing every room and even includes a table for plutonium visions should the investigators be foolish enough to take the drug found in the house and the consequences of the various things that could happen there. It also includes a pulp section that has the painting in the closet, one that is so corrupted by the mythos that it draws the investigators into the scene where they have to find their way back out. The second sidetrack, the Derbyshire Horror, could be inserted into proceedings if the investigators come to visit Henson Manufacturing, and although not tied to the main thread of the campaign, is interesting in and of itself. It involves a situation in the small village of Lesser Edale where 2 of its residents were murdered and a third injured to near death. A large wild dog was suspected, and indeed the local police constable, Hubert Tumwell, shot a large dog that he believed was responsible. However, strange wails and howls are still heard on the night of the full moon. Responsibility actually lies with Eloise Vane, the daughter of the local Lord of Plumcastle, Lord Arthur Vane, who has unknowingly been struck down with a family curse that transforms her into a ghoul on a full moon. The local vicar, Jeremy Stratton, suspects it's something to do with the family curse which he's uncovered in his research, but does not want to slander the good name of Lord Vane by making it public. Lord Vane's son, Lawrence, knows that his sister is to blame and feels terrible guilt for the murders. The Vane family have essentially battened down the hatches and started locking a drugged and conscious Eloise in the dungeons underneath the castle on nights of the full moon, restraining her when she transforms, though her howls echo through the tunnels that are underneath the castle, leading locals to rightly believe that the situation still goes on. The scenario involves the uncovering of the truth about the Vane family curse and assisting Lord Vane if they can. They have many lines of inquiry in the village via the likes of the constable and the vicar, as well as research they can perform in Derby itself to uncover information about the Vane family line, and they can even be invited to Plum Castle and dine with the Vanes, meeting the kind and graceful Eloise, who is completely unaware of her transformation. It stats out the castle itself, and the whole thing culminates with Eloise escaping the dungeons and them either having to kill her, thus ending the curse for this generation, or capturing her. Should they act with care and sensitivity, they will have an ally in their pursuit of the Brotherhood and the Black Pharaoh in Lord Vane. Finally, it stats out everything you could require in this adventure, including the pulp option of a ghoul pack that are drawn to Eloise's call. Okay, so that concludes part 1 of the England chapter. Part 2 will be the conclusion.